There are people that see you, see your beauty, see your uniqueness, and they value those things that you possess. And to them, you are valuable. Hello, and welcome to The Connection. This podcast is about understanding and building the connection we have with others and with ourselves. I hope that through this podcast, you will learn to have more joy and fulfillment in your life. My name is Jared Hurst, and I am so excited to talk with you today. I have been thinking about doing this podcast for so long. One of the questions that I was asking myself is, why do I want to do a podcast? What was the purpose that I want to do this? And the simplest explanation I can give you is that I want to help people that are dealing with the pain and the struggles that I've been through. And I want to help people that are dealing with pain and struggles that I haven't been through. You know, I've had an interesting life. I'm 43 years old. I've been divorced twice. And this is definitely not where I thought I would be at this point in my life. It basically comes down to I reached a breaking point. After my first divorce, I said to myself, well, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? How can I change my life moving forward? And it was perfect timing. My boss ended up taking my entire real estate team to a Tony Robbins convention out in San Jose. And I remember being there in that giant auditorium, stadium, arena, and thinking, I wish I was up there on stage with him. It was the first time in my life that I ever felt jealous of somebody else's life. Not the money, not the lifestyle, but the ability to be there, helping influence people's lives for the better. And over the next couple of years, I definitely worked on myself, but it wasn't until 2 years ago, after I separated from my second wife, a sentence that I never thought I would be saying. And I realized that I had to make a change, or I was going to continue to repeat the pattern of my life over and over again. And I started looking at it and I said, how can I take accountability for what's going on in my life? And how can I change my life? What is the key to me having the life that I want? And what is the key to me not being in the same situation again in the future? And I believe that key is learning how to love myself. And so for the last 2 years, I have been doing everything I possibly can to try and change the way that I view myself. You know, I haven't always had the greatest self-image. I haven't been great at dealing with my emotions. I haven't always been great at my romantic relationships, my friendships, and sometimes I haven't been great at my family relationships. And so I wanted to make a difference and change those things. And what I want to do is I want to help people with those same issues. I want to give people tools, and I want to help people feel loved and the connection that they deserve to have. So that's why I'm here today. When you were creating the very first podcast, for your first episode, for your very first podcast, what do you talk about when you're wanting to help people? The phrase that came into my mind is, I am not enough. The reason that phrase comes into my mind is I've heard, and I don't know if this is an official statistic or not, but I've heard that about 70% of the people in the world have a belief that they are not enough. Now, whether that number is accurate or not, the fact that it could be anywhere close that is not okay. And I want the people that are dealing with that, whether you believe that you're not enough, or you believe there's something wrong with you, you believe you're not lovable, anything that's relating to not feeling that you're enough. I want you to understand that you are not alone. There are people out there that understand what you're going through, and so many people are feeling that same way. And I have an analytical mind. I like to question things. I like to understand things. So why? Why do so many people feel that they are not enough? I believe it's because so many people don't feel that they deserve love. I think a lot of people don't feel that they deserve love is because they believe that they need to be valuable in order to earn love. They believe that love is earned. I want to explain some of the ways in which I believe that people think value is earned, because I think that's really important. I am a strong believer that it is through understanding and awareness that we gain the ability to create our reality instead of having our reality created for us by our environment, by our belief systems, by our thoughts, by our actions. We're on a type of autopilot mode when we aren't aware. So one of the things that I think is so prevalent, and you can see it in our society over the last 2-3 decades, is that we believe our value comes from attention. And I don't want to sit here and make social media to be this evil thing, because I believe social media is a tool and can be incredibly powerful if it's used right. Well, with that said, so many people have changed their belief that I am valuable when people notice me. I am valuable when people like what I have to say, when people comment on what I have to say, when people acknowledge what I'm doing. Attention has become the currency of love. Tony Robbins, I've heard him talk about this on multiple occasions. He said that it used to be when he would do a seminar back in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s that most people valued love, connection, and certainty. Like those were the main things that people said that they wanted most. And the thing that he sees most people say they want now is they want to be significant. It's because we've taught ourselves as a society that that's what it takes in order to be loved, in order to have connection with other people. And that's what we value most as human beings, is love and connection. I think there's a bunch of other things that play into that, other than social media. There's things we look at our value as coming from our qualities, from our looks, our intelligence, our confidence, our, pick a trait. A lot of the times we put our value in the things that we've accomplished. So I built this business, or I won this race, or whatever it is that you did. A lot of us start pushing ourselves towards these goals because that's how we're going to receive the love and connection that we want. That's how we're going to become valuable. And then the last two things I think that really play into value is they're kind of tied to each other, but it's our identity. It's the way that we view ourselves. On some level, I think as our society has become more and more comfortable with divorce, and yes, I recognize I've been divorced twice, I think that has led to more and more children struggling with their identity believing that they are being abandoned, believing that there's something that they did wrong, that there's something wrong with them, that they have to be perfect in order to be loved, and if they aren't, they'll be left. I think bullying and the way that we treat other people affects the way that we start to view ourselves at a young age, and I think that is a huge key to value and the way that we look at love. So then the question is, how do we fix it? What do we do in order to start working at it? And I'm not going to claim that in this one episode, or even that over the course of this podcast, that I'm going to be able to solve the world's problems with feeling like they're enough. But I do have some ideas, some things that have helped me, and I can tell you without a doubt that I am a different man today than I was 2 years ago, and a different man 2 years ago than I was 5-6 years ago, and a different man 5-6 years ago than I was 10-15 years ago. Like, there are definite plateaus and steps in my progression, and I am not the same man I used to be. And a lot of that is because of all the work I put in, and some of those things is what I want to share with you. Now, the first thing I want to talk about, I know this is polarizing for some people. I know there's people that are going to hear this and they're going to groan internally. But I'll tell you why this is on my list and why it's here first. And that's affirmations. Now, hear me out. If you hate affirmations, just hear me out for a moment. About 2 years ago, I was going through a phase in my life where the only thing I could get myself to do was get out of bed and drive to work. When I got to work, I did almost nothing. I literally had the desire to want to change my life, but I didn't want to change my life, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I wanted to want to change my life, if that makes sense. And I said to myself, I can't get myself to do much. I do not feel any drive, any motivation to do anything. But I can drive to work every day. So what if I do these whole affirmation things and see if they help me at all? And so I went and I looked at the negative beliefs that I had, the things that were holding me back, my biggest struggles that I was aware of. And I wrote affirmations to counter those things. And I felt like such an idiot saying things that I didn't believe about myself. But I'll tell you what, after doing it for 3 weeks, and by the way, I'd get in the car, I would start saying them along with my recording, and the longer I was in the car, the more energy I tried to put into it. And I couldn't muster much energy when I started, but as I got going and I put a little more energy and then a little more energy, by the end, I was saying it with as much enthusiasm as I possibly could by the time I got to work. I'll tell you what, after 3 weeks, I felt like I wanted to change my life. And after 3 months, 6 months, I found that there were times that I started believing the things that I was saying. And sometimes I would say something or I would do something, and that thought, that affirmation would pop into my head. And it would come out as though it was something I already believed about myself. Now, I don't always do affirmations. I don't do them every day. But I do them on occasion, and they do help me when I get into a rut. So give it a try. The next thing I think is really important is beginning to see yourself differently. I remember I had this negative belief that I wasn't very attractive. And so what I would do is every time I looked in a mirror, I would look at myself and I would try and find the things about myself that I found attractive. And I kept doing that over and over every time I looked in the mirror. And eventually I started to view myself differently. Eventually I started to find myself more attractive. And I started having more confidence in my my looks. And obviously that's just one aspect of life, but the point is, as you start to look at yourself differently and you do it consistently, you will start to change the way you see yourself. All right, and then I want to get back to value. And this is also kind of about seeing yourself differently. All right, if there is nothing else that you listen to or remember from what I say today, if there's nothing else that registers with you, I want you to remember this one thing. Value is subjective. Value is determined by our value system. So one person that values strength and confidence will not view somebody who is kind and loving the same way somebody that values kind and loving people. Like, that second person is going to view that person completely different. And so the point is I'll give you an analogy. I love analogies. Analogies are this incredible way to see the world in a different viewpoint. I take two people. One is a nature lover, one is an art lover. I take them both to an art gallery, and the art lover says, "Look at those beautiful brushstrokes. Look what the artist is portraying." And the nature lover might say, "Yeah, I get it. It looks nice," but it doesn't move them emotionally in the same way. And then you take those two outside, and the nature lover is like, "Look at the colors in that mountain, and look at the way that tree sits, and look at this, and look at that." And the art lover might say, "Yeah, it looks pretty cool," but it doesn't move them in the same way. And we are the same. There are people that see you, see your beauty, see your uniqueness, and they value those things that you possess. And to them, you are valuable. This is why people say, find your people, find your tribe. There are people that look at you and appreciate what you have to offer. You are not going to be for everybody. And as soon as you stop trying to make everybody like you and realize that it is okay to be you, it is okay to let out the parts of you, the authentic, lovely, beautiful, amazing you into the world, that's when you're going to start loving yourself more, because you are embracing who you are. I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. The next thing I really want to talk about is internal validation instead of external validation. So what I mean by that is when you start validating yourself internally, you start seeing all the things about yourself that you love, that you appreciate, and you are constantly giving yourself validation. That is when you are going to start healing the things about yourself, the identity issues that you have, the ways that you view yourself incorrectly. The problem is external validation is never going to heal you. External validation is like a drug. It will make you feel better temporarily. It will numb the pain that you're feeling inside, but it is not going to make you whole. Only you can do that. And I'll give you an example. If external validation worked, every famous person would have an incredible self-esteem. They would absolutely love themselves because they're constantly being told how amazing they are. They're constantly receiving validation in the form of money, attention, etc. But the thing is it doesn't change the way that you look at yourself. If you look at yourself in a negative way, you will find ways to justify all those other things away. They don't know the real me. If they knew the real me, then XYZ, they only care about this, and this about me. They only care about my looks. They only care about my money. They only care about my fame, etc. That's why external validation never works, is because our identity will fight with whatever we're getting from those external validations. Yes, we'll notice it and we'll feel it temporarily, but we will find a way to justify away whatever external validation we have received because it's not in alignment with how we view ourselves, our identity. The last two things that I think are really important to changing the idea of I am not enough is working with our thoughts. That's stopping bad thoughts and correcting those thoughts into empowering, growth-minded thoughts. And one of the things that's really important is to catch yourself, to start to become aware every time you have one of those negative thoughts or every time you put off a compliment. Everybody does this, so see if this sounds familiar. Somebody gives you a compliment and you're like, oh, that's not true. Or, oh, thanks, and then you even wave them off with your hand. It's because you are not accepting that compliment. You actually aren't internalizing it because you don't believe that it's true. Or you believe that if you do accept that compliment and you do internalize it, that means there's something wrong with you because you're being prideful and you are putting yourself up on a pedestal or something like that. Most people, that's not their problem. Most people, their problem is that they can't see themselves properly. And they see the bad things and they don't see any of the good things. And that's the last concept that I really wanted to talk about. And that is seeing ourselves properly. So it's managing our thoughts, creating powerful, empowering thoughts, and then it's seeing ourselves properly and treating ourselves properly. And what that is showing ourselves love through thoughts, words, and actions. I once made a list and I said, all right, if I was a separate person and I was trying to show Jared how much I loved him, what would I do? And I wrote down this big list of all the ways that I would show Jared that I loved him. And then what I did is I started thinking that way. I was like, how can I show these things to myself through my thoughts? How can I show these things to myself through my words? How can I show these things to myself through my actions? And it's all about doing those things consistently. If you're constantly managing your thoughts, your words, and your actions to be in alignment with showing yourself love, I promise you will start feeling differently about yourself. And some of those things are doing anti-self-conscious action. That means if you would hold back from doing something because you're worried how other people are going to view you, start doing those things that would make you feel self-conscious if they are authentic to what you truly want and it is not going to hurt other people. When you start doing the things that you want to do, and you start showing yourself that you're not ashamed of yourself, you start showing yourself that you can trust yourself through doing consistent things and keeping your promises to yourself, when you start showing yourself compassion and patience and love, one of the things that I think most of us have heard and can't be said enough is if the voice in your head was somebody next to you, how long would you let that person stay in your life? And the answer for most of us is not very long because we treat ourselves terribly. So it's about learning to treat yourself consistently with the same love and affection that we so easily give other people, but that we withhold from ourselves. I know some of these things probably don't seem like they're these major earth-shattering things, and the truth is they're not. It really is about thoughts and actions, consistent thoughts and actions over time. And it is not a simple process. It takes time and repetition in order to change the way that you view yourself. You have whatever number of years you've been alive on this planet, forming and creating the identity that you have inside your head. That doesn't change easily, but it's worth it. It's so worth it. I hope that this helps some of you. My goal is to be here each week with something new, a new way of understanding ourselves, a new way of viewing ourselves, a new tool that can help us. I want to be able to continue to give you ways to change your life. And that also is, like I said, about how we interact with other people and how we relate to those people. So we'll definitely have plenty of that. So I'll see you on our next podcast. Until then, don't give up. Keep trying, and remember, you are not alone.